A lot of women I coach really struggle with their family dynamics, and it is something that will keep you looping in negative cycles for your whole entire life until you grasp a hold of it. I am Sarah Jayne and I am the founder of The Self-Worth Secret, and it is my mission to help women grow and evolve into the best version of themselves. So let's dive deep into the whole women and family dynamics, okay? And that could really be in relationship primarily. It's generally firstly with caregivers, mom, dad, or both. Or, a caregiver could be, an adoptive parent or a foster parent or somebody who has been in a really close capacity to you or involved in your upbringing as a child. That can then filter out into, brothers and sisters, aunties and uncles, cousins, etc., okay? Grannies and grandas. So really, the whole family dynamic. And where a lot of women struggle in families is that, they grow up and there comes in a time in their life where maybe they have an awakening, or they start to outgrow the old ways. They start to take their power back. They start to speak their truth. They start to challenge the norms. And then what happens is families are like, nah, I don't like this. And yeah, I'm going to punish you for this. So then there will be obviously tension, there will be conflict. They may restrict access to certain things or people within the family. There may be, there might be slander, or you'll be spoken about poorly. And these are really difficult times to navigate, especially if there is an element of codependency there. And codependency is whenever you believe that your worth depends on something else being there too. So you need that other person, you need them for something. There's an attachment, like a string attached, and you feel for your survival that you need to have that in your life. And I think, on the island that I live on, Northern Ireland, that it's very much, there's a lot of stigma and shame around families, and that is your mother and that is your father. And if you don't talk to them, and what about if something happens to them, etc. And, it's about really breaking that, because I think and I believe that if there is some type of, for example, core wound in there, for example, abuse has occurred or trauma has occurred within that family dynamic, and somebody grows up, and then in their adult life, they're trying to heal and they're trying to bring it to the surface and they're trying to work it out. If those other parties involved cannot meet them where they're at with compassion and have those conversations or express remorse, and there is no change, it is very difficult for that person to continue in that dynamic without making themselves more resilient, without having more boundaries. And it can be really disruptive to their peace to be continually weaved in and out of that cycle here that is not changing. And the thing is, people can only meet you at the level that they can meet themselves. So the only person that you can change is you. And a lot of women that I coach experience, they have wounding, i.e. a mother wound or a father wound, and that'll be where there has been, their needs haven't been met in some way. There could be an element of trauma, abuse, they could they could have been in the best family and, physically their needs were met, but maybe emotionally their needs weren't met. They could have had a parent who enabled another parent, who ignored abuse, a narcissistic parent who maybe uses a child as an extension of themselves and really isn't, that caring of the child's needs, that everything is always about them. Sometimes as children, they can become parentified, where they're the caregiver and they're responsible for the emotional needs of that parent. And really, as a child, when you go into adulthood, you're just replaying out what you've learned. And that's why a lot of women, have low self-worth, suffer from codependency, because they think that their worth is connected to something else, where they feel that they have to prove themselves, where they feel that love has to be earned, where they feel they have to be perfect all the time, where they don't implement boundaries because they are afraid of somebody leaving, where they don't speak their truth because they don't want there to be conflict. And then that just drives their life. It drives the relationship they have with themselves. It drives the relationship they have with romantic relationships. It will drive their career. And if a wound, sometimes a lot of us, and I know I did, came out of childhood with wounding, and I stuck plasters over it. Didn't even know it was there for years. And then like all the little tugs just kept happening, and I was going round and round in cycles, and eventually Sarah Jayne woke up and was like, okay, I've got the memo now. And I was 20 at 29, so that's like, was that 8 years ago now, where I really started to do the deep work into healing the wounds. And you can't really plant beautiful flowers in a garden full of weeds, so you have to really know the root core of a situation. You have to really know how it's affected you. You have to know what wound it's caused, and then you have to be willing to, it's a lifelong journey being in recovery of trauma or abuse or wounding, and you have to reprogram your brain and your mind from what it has been used to, from what you've been punching it into it for years, like a computer system. You have to, reprogram that computer with now what you want it to be and do. And I think family is the one thing that's always really close to people's heart, and family is everything, or people are ingrained with family first. And I have experienced firsthand, having to grieve people in my life who I should never have had to grieve, but they can't meet me at a point where they're going to respect me, and they're going to respect the boundaries I've implemented, or where they're going to change. And if somebody can't change and they're going to continue to come into your life to abuse you, or even people can still abuse you in the background, that's a really difficult decision to make, to have to release that person and let them go for your own growth. And there's no right or wrong answer to this. It just depends on the specific person and where they're at in their life, and how strong they are, and how great the pain is, and how much healing they've done, and how that connection affects their life. And that's really a personal decision that has to be made from one individual to another. But I think it's a really important conversation to have, because it can drive lives for years and years and years in the wrong direction, because it'll keep you looping and looping. Because while you're waiting on somebody else to change, you're wasting your own life. The change has to start from you, and the change is within you. You just have to, activate it, and then really one day at a time, one small step at a time, you choose yourself every single day moving forward, and you do what's right for you.